In today's video, we're checking out the ECOFLOW Smart Generator. We'll go over all the features of this unit and also take a look at the engine, who actually makes it, and was it a reliable choice. We'll compare a few different features, comparing a Honda generator as well, and we'll try out doing a couple different charging methods using the Honda and the ECOFLOW Smart Generator with the ECOFLOW power station. And to save money, be sure to check the links below for the best deals on ECOFLOW products. After unboxing this unit, this is everything you'll see, including this big cord, which this cord is specific to the ECOFLOW Smart Generator. This is meant to specifically plug into the ECOFLOW Delta power station by simply plugging it into the generator and then into the power station with this adapter that's provided when you buy the Delta Pro. This allows both units to communicate with each other. That way, if the Delta Pro power station gets low, the generator will automatically fire up based on settings that you happen to put into your app. We're mainly going to talk about the generator today and not so much the ECOFLOW Delta. The Smart Generator comes in right about at 65 pounds, which is 10 pounds heavier than most generators fully loaded with fuel and oil like this Max Pinion rods or even the Honda 2200, so you will need both hands to kind of carry this unit around. The Smart Generator does come with electric start, but also pull start if the battery happens to die, and then your on-off switch, which is on the side of the generator here, which this will control the battery and fuel. Now this generator is only rated at 1.8 kilowatts or 1800 watts at 120 volts and 15 amps. Another thing that's a little bit different is the higher rated RPM at 5000 RPMs, which we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through the video. This unit is also made in China, pretty much like most of the other ECOFLOW products. The 1.05 gallon fuel tank has a pretty standard gas cap which is vented, and also one thing I noticed, they didn't put the little lanyard or tether on there to keep your gas cap from flying away, but you also have your fuel measure mark inside the fuel cell as well. We're going to go ahead and pop off this side panel now, and this is just held on by a couple cam screws. You turn them a quarter turn to the left, and then this will allow the whole side panel to pop off. Now, I've been around a lot of these generators, and immediately I knew who this engine was from, which is from Ratto Engineering. They've been around a long time making these 80cc engines in a lot of different generators, and quite a popular one too. This Predator 2000 model, I've had plenty of replies from customers who said they're well into a couple thousand hours on this generator, so I don't think reliability will be an issue when it comes to this particular unit. Now, there are a few differences you might happen to notice. Like one, you do have the lithium battery right here. This is for the electric start, which the starter is tucked way back there in the back, and you do have a couple of stepper motors up on top sitting on the carburetor, which those basically are the electric choke and also throttle control. So when this thing kind of runs, it does it automatically. You have extra electronics for DC and AC output, and then for the most part it's pretty much the same. But when it does come to servicing this generator, I would like to see a notch down here. This allows for easier drain flow when you're changing the oil in this, and when it comes to changing the spark plug, I don't think this is actually going to be one of the easier models, because as you see way back there, there's no access port on top allowing a longer wrench, so you have to use the supplied tools, which I bet will still be a challenge. Now, when it comes to learning about or servicing your generator, this manual is something you guys really should read. There's a lot of good information in here. I tend to never really read these, so I'm pretty much just going to toss this thing to the side. We'll go ahead and get the battery now connected, which this is a real easy step, so we'll just kind of jam through this. You just take off the protective caps, put them together as shown, and then we can just put the protective caps back together, and this will kind of keep them tucked up and out of the way, and then push your wire back into a safe spot, and then we can go ahead and move on to the next step. Now, when it comes to putting oil in this generator, after reading the manual, this is something I found, is that this does take a 10W 40-way oil, so for the most part, this is something a little bit different from the other generators I've worked on, because they all take a 1030 weight. Now, what's different about this engine though is because this particular model does run a higher engine speed, remember that 5000 RPM? Well, that's probably the reason for needing actually a 40 weight versus using a 1030 weight like all the other generators I've pretty much worked on. When adding your oil, you'll want to make sure you get a rag under there just to make sure if you make a mess, you clean it up. And when you do add your oil, check the dipstick first, because you can see I have a little bit of oil on there. So if I was to fill it up all the way to the recommended spec, I would probably overfill it. And this is also a good time to smash that like button if you guys like the video, and subscribe if you want to see more content that's going to be coming out real soon. And we'll go ahead and continue on getting this ready to get fired up. But you'll know your generator is full of oil when the oil touches the threads on the dipstick. You can see this one I actually overfilled just a little bit. We'll go ahead and replace a dipstick and then start cleaning up and go over a couple more features. But one other thing to show you is at the bottom of the carburetor, you do have a drain screw. This is what opens the float ball and allows the fuel to drain out for long-term storage. But there is a typo in the manual, and this is something EcoFlow should fix. But if you take a look here, it says oil drain bolt. Well, there is no oil drain bolt, but there is a drain screw that's on the bottom of the carburetor, and that's what it is talking about. So just to take note, if you guys happen to see that, that's the typo. Now, using this unit is easy. You just turn it to the on position and this will activate the battery and the display will light up. And there's not a whole lot of features on this. It just shows your input and output and a few other things, but this is where that smart cable goes. And then you only have one AC outlet, and that's really about it when it comes to this generator. There's not a whole lot of features to it. So we'll go ahead and get it fired up and add some fuel. And when you guys are adding fuel to these things, it only takes 87 octane. There's no reason to run 91. But another thing too is if you're looking for a good gas can, these SureCan gas cans are definitely one of the best gas cans I've ever had. I do have links in the description if you are interested in learning more about them. They are definitely great. And another thing to note is that when you are filling up all of your small engines, be sure to use a fuel stabilizer or either a fuel conditioner. I happen to like Lucas products. It's always worked well for me. Now that we have some fuel inside the unit, we'll go ahead and tighten the cap and remember to open the vent. And now we can go ahead and turn the unit on, and then this should light up the display. So what I'm going to do is pull the cord about 3 or 4 times to circulate the oil inside the engine since it hasn't been fired up before. And then we'll use the electric start, which actually there it went, it just kind of fired up on its own. Alright, as we take a look at the display now, you can see it says 29%. This is roughly our fuel level that's in there, so it should run about 4 hours while it just sits here and idles. And this automatically starts in the default mode for Eco, so it's going to be at 60 Hertz Eco mode. And if you want to change that, you actually have to use the app, which you'll want to download that on your phone. And you can look more into that on the EcoFlow power station that I did just on the last video. But as we take a look at this, it pretty much sounds like a Ratto engine. Kind of has that little more of a ting sound to it. But overall, it does sound good. So while we're here, we might as well do a sound check. So we're going to compare it to a Honda 2200 just to kind of see the differences. I already know it's not going to be as quiet, but it does set a good benchmark because the Honda is pretty much tough to beat, and it is pretty much the quietest one out there. So now at about 23 feet away, we're going to start with the Honda. It is in Eco mode. We're just not going to have any load on it. And then I have my sound meter right over here at 23 feet. So we'll take a look at it. And I want you to listen to the engine. It has a lower tone to it, running right around 55 decibels. And when it's sitting here on the concrete, this is going to be about as loud as it'll be because there's nothing like trees or bushes to absorb it, or grass and dirt. That'll actually make the generator a little bit quieter. But this is where I'll normally see the Honda is right around 55 to 56 decibels. So now we're going to use a hairdryer to provide a load, and that's going to draw about 1650 watts, give or take, because it is getting a little bit tired even though it's rated for about 1800 plus. So now with the Honda generator sitting there, we'll see how many decibels it is. We'll do the same test with the EcoFlow as well. And so now with the Honda kind of revved up, it's almost at max load. It's running right around 63 decibels. And if you listen, notice the engine tone again and how low it is, and we'll compare that to the EcoFlow here in just a minute. Because the tone can also change the way that you perceive the sound. And something else to look at is the RPM of the Honda generator. If you take a look here on the side, this is only rated for 4,000 RPM, and we'll actually do an RPM check here in just a second to compare the EcoFlow Smart Generator and the Honda. Even this Max Peating Rods generator, which is a high-speed engine according to their build, it's rated at 4,600 RPM, which I thought this was actually quite a bit for a small generator until the EcoFlow. So now we'll do the EcoFlow generator, and one thing to note is the tone of the engine. So as we take a look, running right around 60 decibels. And this is exactly where the Predator came out. AI Power also came out right around 60 decibels, and a couple other generators that I did test. But if you note the sound of this one, it does kind of have more of a tingy sound to it, so that perceives this as also louder in general as well. So even though the decibels are higher, it also sounds louder as well just because of the actual tone of the engine. And so one thing I also wanted to show you guys too is that with the heat gun, we're drawing about 1650 watts, give or take, but I wanted to check the RPM. And as we take a look here, I have the heat gun all the way up. It's pretty much maxed out. And you can see that the EcoFlow generator is running right around 5,000. That's pretty much the max RPM for this generator. So I was surprised it was all the way maxed out. And I mean, even though this generator really isn't for this, but I decided to see what idle was as well. And with no load, just a generator in eco mode at idle, basically, it's turning about 3,300 RPM. Now when we compare the Honda at idle with no load, look at the difference. That's about 500 RPM difference just at idle, and that's also fuel consumption as well. So we'll hook up the hairdryer, make sure this is all the way on. And now as we take a look, about 3,650 RPM, give or take, about 350 from max, which, so now it's not maxed out, but not to mention that this is 1,400 RPM lower than the EcoFlow generator. So it is kind of interesting on how the difference is. So as we get back to our sound test, now you can see the decibels on this one at max load is quite a bit higher. Now this is actually where Predator, AI Power, Champion, they all came out around 72 to 74 decibels and pretty much a max load. So this isn't anything new to me, but I was hoping for lower numbers, at least for this generator, because I mean, it would be nice to have numbers kind of like a Honda and stuff, but it's totally meant for something different. But I'm surprised that they use such a high RPM motor, even though this is mainly focused on DC output. I'm surprised the RPM really is set so high, which I also wonder what this does for fuel efficiency as well. Now, if you're wondering about a fuel shutoff, technically it really doesn't have one, but if you've seen my other videos where I have the secret fuel shutoff valve, well, now you can see the generator shuts off, and I don't understand why companies are not doing this. This is nothing new. A fuel shutoff location or a designated spot should be pretty much on every one of these now for long-term storage. But so basically what happens is if you just put it to the edge, you'll have a fuel shutoff here. It basically stops the fuel flowing from the petcock if you put it right where the O is, and then that'll basically allow the fuel to stop. And then you put it to the off position completely, and now the generator is in the full off position. So now we're going to do a couple of charging comparisons using the Smart generator with the Delta Pro, and then we'll also use a Honda as well, because the Delta Pro is supposed to be charged with the EcoFlow Smart generator, which is 10% more efficient charging directly through DC, versus the Honda generator is going to be charging it with AC power. And so we'll see if that's actually more efficient, because they're both rated at 15 amps, the Honda and the EcoFlow. So we'll see which one actually looks like does a little bit better, or is there really no difference at all. But the smart communication with the EcoFlow generator is obviously a huge advantage, but is there any charging differences? So we have the generator fired up and running, and right now you can see it's putting out about 1,620 watts, give or take. And so this is basically maxed out RPM as well on the EcoFlow Smart generator. So this is pretty much running at full steam to charge this up through DC. You can see it's about 2 hours, 18% charged. I'll charge this just for about another minute or so, and we'll see if there's any difference really in hooking up the Honda. And I do have the app already allowing to make sure that the generator can charge it at the full amount that it can, which is 1,800 watts. And you control that through the app on your phone. You can put this down to 1,000 watts on the generator, or all the way up to 1,800, versus AC you can actually drop it a lot farther down. But we'll hook this up in just a minute and we'll see what the differences are. So we'll take note about 1,620, and then we'll see if there's any difference hooking up the Honda at all. And right now it says about 2 hours, give or take. So I'll get this hooked up and we'll try it out. Okay, so the Honda's up and going. It's on eco mode. And so right now I didn't change the app, so it's only allowing it to charge at about 800. That's where I have the settings. So I'm going to go into my phone app for the EcoFlow. I'll change it to max at 1,800 for AC input, because you have to use the other cord, not the Smart generator cord, which we'll unplug this real quick. Now this one's not running obviously, but we're using the AC cord in the back of the Delta Pro, which is plugged into the Honda. Okay, so now I changed the app to 1,800 watts input, and you can see that the RPM is going up, the wattage is actually going up. And so now we're actually pulling more wattage in, or it's putting out more into the Delta Pro we're over 50 at the moment from the Smart generator. And if you remember how many RPMs we were turning at about 1,650 with a heat gun, it's 1,400 less RPM. So you got to think fuel efficiency. if you're actually turning a lot less RPM, then the fuel efficiency of the Honda is probably going to be better than the actual smart generator, because now look, we're at 1720 almost, and the generator will just go down in RPM as it fills up. So another thing too is that it's charging AC, so I bet we can run both generators with DC and AC. All right, so here we go, check it out. Honda is running on the AC input, and then the smart generator is running on the DC input with a smart cable. And so this one's putting out right around 1650 basically watts. So look at that, we're getting almost 3400 watts of input into the Delta Pro, which this is actually capable of handling 3600 total. So this is like almost being at a supercharger for the most part. So this is actually pretty cool, because that Delta Pro really can handle a lot of power input, either from solar, or if it's, you know, going through the infinity port at a, you know, EV station. It's just impressive what this unit actually does. The smart generator is definitely cool. It has cool features, being able to talk to obviously the Delta Pro, but is it as efficient as a Honda? I don't know. It just kind of doesn't make sense to me that, you know, being 10% more efficient but running a lot more RPM, fuel efficiency wise, I bet the Honda would actually do better, which maybe that's another test down the road. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below, and I hope you guys like this video. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe, and until then, I hope to see you guys next time.